Welcome to the Widows Collective, where grief meets hope, healing, and community. I'm Lauren Lentz, grief coach, fellow widow, and the heart behind this space. There is life before loss, and then there is life after. If you're here, it likely means your life has been turned upside down by the death of your person. Maybe you've just found yourself in this new world that feels unrecognizable, or maybe you've been walking it for a while, trying to figure out what healing looks like now. I want you to know you are not alone. This podcast is a gathering place for widows living in the after. Together, we'll name the ache, honor the love, and share tools, truths, and stories that help you feel supported along the way. My hope is that every episode gives you a sense of community, comfort, and permission to meet yourself exactly where you are. Hello, and welcome back to episode 9. It's not you, it's the envelope. The Griever's holiday paradox. The death of a spouse is so disorienting for a multitude of reasons. It completely turns your entire world upside down. And additionally, for many of us, a part of that disorientation comes from the opposing thoughts and feelings that show up, ones that often don't look anything like who we used to be. I remember the first time I really noticed this. It was just a few weeks after Kevin had been killed, and the holiday cards started flooding in, along with the invites to all the different festive gatherings. Normally, the me that would show up pre-loss would have been saying yes to everything and adding each card to a little display area in the house. But all of a sudden, I felt torn. I didn't want people to stop sending the cards and the invitations because they meant I was remembered and still a part of their lives. And at the same time, I didn't want to open them. It was too painful, too raw. Each envelope felt like a reminder of a world that no longer existed. Families complete, traditions continuing to unfold, and a life that would never look like mine again. So I did what felt right in the moment. I shoved the cards into a Ziploc bag and I told myself I'd look through them later, when I was ready, when my heart could hold both the ache and the beauty at the same time. I took the invites day by day, only attending what I had the capacity for. If something felt too overwhelming or activating, I decided it wasn't the right choice in that moment. That tension, the desire to connect and be seen, and the desire to disappear is exactly what a lot of us feel during the holidays after loss. And sometimes when you're in that tender in between, the people around us hesitate. They second guess if they should make the call, send the card, or extend the invite. They don't always know how to show up, and that uncertainty can make everything feel even more confusing and lonely. In today's episode, we'll explore the Griever's paradox, how the push and pull of connection and withdrawal shapes our experience during the holidays. I'm honored to be joined by Rio Richards, grief and trauma therapist and coach, whose grounded wisdom and unexpected comedic timing bring warmth and depth to these heavier conversations. Together, we'll explore ways to navigate this season with tenderness, presence, and self-compassion.
Hi.
Oh,
I had a complete panic. I was like, wait, I don't think I sent her the link. So I was like, what's the email? And I'm like, oh no, I don't see it. I just see the questions.
that's hilarious because I had a panic. Like, I could have sworn she sent the link. Where was it?
Did I send it to you in the email?
Yeah.
Okay. I just made
Well, you sent me a separate email. So
Yeah.
we were going back and forth in one email, and then you sent me the link in a separate email.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're here, and I'm having a second coffee for the day for you.
Love it. My honor. Thank you. I haven't had my second yet. It'll have to happen after.
Okay.
So, before we dive into our questions and our conversation today, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that although I'm speaking to the experience of a widow because that's my lived story and that's who I support now as a coach, these questions are applicable to all grievers that are navigating the holiday season without their loved one. And it's one of the many reasons that I chose to speak to you today because you hold such a wide lens. You are a griever yourself, and you spent years supporting people moving through many different forms of loss. So you really understand the intricacy of this season from multiple angles, which gives you a broader picture of what's happening beneath the surface for so many right now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I'm really excited to talk to you today. I know that, yes, it's sort of, what you're speaking to reminds me of the idea that grief is so individual and yet there are so many universal pieces to it. We are alone in carrying our unique loss, but we're not alone in trying to live life afterwards.
And what shows up
That
for many of us.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the first question that I thought of was this time of the year can feel really conflicting for widows. I have noticed that some feel this need to fill up the calendar, right? To be involved in all the social events and traditions, while others want to bury themselves inside of their bed under their blankets and arrive back out of this mess after the holidays have left us and we've moved into the new year. So, why do the holidays often intensify these urges to engage or isolate?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a really great question. And I tend to often use the lens of the nervous system and what's happening in the body as we are processing and holding so much stress and devastation and secondary losses and reminders and all that this season holds. And so when I look at it through that lens, I'm really thinking about capacity. Our window of tolerance, so to speak, which is a polyvagal term, our window of tolerance tends to shrink. Like our capacity diminishes. It's much lower during this time because of all of the many layers, like the need to maybe perform at a greater, let's see, what do I want to say, like cadence or volume than typical, like holidays being with family, friends, cheerful, joyful. So the performance, the pressure to perform is often higher. And then the reminders and the triggers, of course, are everywhere. And those are often at a much greater scale. And so everything is really condensed during this time. And so that shrinks our capacity. We have a greater lack of like a felt sense of safety during this time. And so really the urge to be with people and like go, being part of it all, I see as a need being met through the safety lens. So being in relationships is regulating, and safe relationships or in connection with people is regulating. Like that is a way that our systems find safety when we're at a really limited capacity. And also conserving energy, isolating, not engaging with the outside world is also a way that our systems protect us. And so I really see them as just two different ways that our systems are trying to protect us. The goal is the same, but it's through very different ways of getting there. And so for some, they might be, in a place where that connecting and feeling held and being in conversation and continuing on with the traditions, that fills their cup in a way during a season that's really stressful. And for other people, it's completely the opposite, but it feels like it's both about seeking more safety during a really stressful time.
Do you think, does that have anything to do with coping mechanisms? Like sometimes I also think that when we busy ourselves and we fill the calendar, we are trying to find distractions, ways, and means to avoid even feeling the heaviness of our truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And avoidance is a great coping skill. And, it gets a bad rap. It typically has such a negative connotation, like you shouldn't avoid, but it is just another way that we protect ourselves. Yeah.
Thank you for validating that, because I do think that a lot of women that I work with feel some sense of shame around busying themselves or avoiding. So that's a very validating way to reframe.
When we're in survival, that's all we've got sometimes. It's just how do I make it through? And avoidance is a tool that can be most accessible. Yeah, I'm all for it when you need it.
So the second question is kind of the other side of that coin. I have also seen that a widow's support system struggles to navigate these few weeks as well. Why do friends and family and our support networks sometimes hesitate to reach out? What fears or assumptions tend to drive that hesitation?
What I've seen in my work, working with grievers. So, of course, I can't speak for everyone's support systems and what they're feeling, but based on my work and the conversations that I have out in my community and in our space that we share, is that there is a real, there, it almost feels like a massive freeze response. Like people don't know, they don't have a guarantee that them reaching out or sending the invite or extending something in some way, they don't have the guarantee that that's not going to make things worse or not going to bring up some feelings. And so they just don't at all. So it feels like this sort of, yeah, it feels kind of like a freeze response, but I think it comes from a place of, I don't know if I'm going to upset them. I don't know if, they want space, if they want to be invited. I don't know what the right call is. So I'm just going to do nothing. And then I think, of course, we can't have this conversation without just acknowledging like the cultural discomfort with someone's pain, and not being able to fix that for someone. I think, again, just generally speaking, culturally and collectively, like that's a very helpless feeling to watch someone in pain and know like there is nothing I can do to change that for them. And I don't think we're good with the feeling of helplessness.
Yes. And I get curious too and wonder if we can only meet someone as deeply as we can meet ourselves, right? And so if we are uncomfortable with our own heavy emotions, we are going to have a really hard time showing up for yours.
Yes. And that's a conversation I have all the time. And I think is so crucial because, of course, to the grieving person, when someone is not reaching out or they are pulling away, that can be, and I can't speak for everyone in every experience, but often that is coming from a place that has nothing to do with the griever whatsoever, and has everything to do with that person's own fear and discomfort and limits, but of course that feels very personal.
Right. Absolutely. Especially initially when you're just so in the thick of it all. And it almost feels like a sense of betrayal. And I think for me personally, I can speak from my experience of with time came better understanding and more compassion for myself and everyone else around me.
Yeah. And I think that's one area where like the both and like the nuance is really important too, because even in saying maybe the catalyst or the crux of what's going on for that person doesn't have anything to do with you, the person grieving, it still is a very inherently personal thing when people aren't showing up for you in your time of need. Like a lot of relationships don't survive that. And that's not because the grieving person is unable to see a different perspective, right? Like that hurt is so real. And it is wrong. And so it's both. It's like, the supporters are often like really struggling with their own stuff. And that has real consequences. Yeah.
That lends us into this next question. Have you seen situations where both a widow and her support system pull back at the same time? And if you have, what does that dynamic usually create? How does it impact her emotionally?
Yes. So I've seen this a lot. And I'll just speak to a general dance that I see in terms of the supporter, the griever, the communication between both people. what I see a lot is that the support person will reach out in some way. And the widow, the grieving person, of course, does not have the capacity to engage either like they usually do or at all. So that might look like just texts going unread or declining invitations. And so what I see happens is that the support person takes that as some sort of personal rejection or hurt and or assumption that, okay, they want space, like they actually don't want me to show up or they don't want me to keep inviting them to things, so I'm going to pull away. That can be in large part, again, it can be their own discomfort, but what I see is this, it's like in those little moments, where an assumption is made and then all of a sudden, there's this chasm that person doesn't need you anymore or doesn't need support or doesn't want it. And, I think that can just compound the really intense loneliness that a widow and a griever feels, like that emotional impact, that compounded loss of relationships, of friendships that come after going through such a soul shifting experience. I think, unconsciously, often it can really reinforce this belief after devastating loss that people leave us, that relationships don't last, that they're not safe. So it can have some really profound and really harmful consequences.
Yeah, those additional layers of grief, those secondary losses that you experience. Absolutely. What do you think are some common misconceptions that friends or family have about including a widow in a holiday plan or a conversation? How do these assumptions contribute to possible silence or avoidance?
So, assumptions that I'm assuming that a lot of supporters might have are one being like she's okay. Like if she, let's say, attends or agrees to participate in something, that means she's better or she's moved on or it's not at the forefront of her every single day, and that can create, again, another really just profound feeling of isolation where your pain isn't seen. And something I'll say sometimes is that, it's almost like our capacity to regulate or capacity to engage with the outside world, which we fight for, we work hard for, that can become evidence that our pain is no longer needing support, when often that's the time when we need it the most because it stops being recognized, or we have all these, mythical timelines around grief. So that's one that I talk about a lot with my clients. Other assumptions, like, hey, if I mention their spouse, that's going to make them sad or make them feel worse, which we know is such doesn't make sense. There's not any moment of any day where that person has forgotten, who's not here and what has happened. And even still, I think when someone takes that risk, when a supporter takes that risk and brings up their spouse, when tears come, I sometimes wish I could just speak to every person supporting grievers and say the tears don't mean that you messed up or that you did something wrong. And they might not even be in a place where they can talk much about it. Again, they might be just trying to get through this event or whatever it is. But that emotion is there, regardless of if you're opening the door for it or not. And so, yeah, I see a lot of this tiptoeing around emotional expression or talking about it. I'm curious what comes up for you. What assumptions do you see?
Well, when you said that too, it reminded me, I was just sharing a story the other day that a year before my husband was killed, I had a friend who lost her husband to terminal illness. And we were all at an event together. And I remember Kevin and I were like, do we say anything? Well, she seems, I'm saying that air quotes, so content and happy right now. We don't want to disrupt that. We don't want to make her cry. And sometimes it still to this day makes me cringe because you just don't know what you don't know. So making those assumptions that I'm going to harm that person. Or you said it in the last question, which is, if I didn't text you back, if I am not reaching out to you because I don't have the capacity and the bandwidth for that conversation today in this moment, you are now assuming that you're no longer needed. And I did have that experience too with friends, like them being offended that I wasn't reaching out. What's wrong with her, right? Like, why isn't she the friend that she used to be? Because they've never been in your shoes. And so they don't really understand it. So it is this super delicate dance that you speak about. But I think also there's something that we don't talk about, which is because we as a society are so uncomfortable with emotions that sometimes we don't extend the invite because we don't want to try to have to manage that. We're worried that you're going to come and then you're going to cry. And now I'm going to have to figure out how to best support you. And I don't know that I have the bandwidth for that right now as I'm trying to deal with catering to everyone else at my party or at this family holiday function.
Exactly. That was going to be the one other assumption that I see is like, oh, if they show up, they're going to be this inconsolable, I'm it's going to take, some sort of massive emotional effort on my part to try and like help them through this day. Yeah.
And so that the griever and the support system slowly move further and further away from one another. When I'm working with my clients, I often remind them that people can't read our minds and that speaking our truth and telling people what we need, if we know what we need, increases the chance that we're going to get that. What are some compassionate ways a widow can communicate her needs, like wanting to be invited but not obligated to go, without feeling like she's some type of burden? Because I hear that a lot too. Like, I don't want to burden anyone.
Yeah. Similarly for me, like a reframe around that, I feel like is super useful when I'm working with clients. And one that I'll use is, it's an honor when, and I think so many people can relate to this, and I know every single person I've ever worked with can relate to this. It's an honor when someone comes to you and says, I'm really hurting, and this is exactly how you can help me in this way. Like when you get that message from someone, you're like, oh my gosh, yes. Like what, tell me what I can do. Tell me how I can help. But when someone lets you in that way, like that's really special. And so if we assume that, and again, this is the most generous interpretation of how a support person would take this. But if we can assume that people want to do a good job for someone who is going through it and who's going through the worst thing they've ever been through. And so sort of first looking at it that way, like you're making them feel good too when you're saying, I want to let you in this way. So starting with that reframe, you're not a burden, like you're, actually creating something special for them as well in that dynamic. But yeah, compassionate ways, that can sound something like, I'd love to be invited, even if I can't commit to coming. The invitation itself really, really matters to me. And I'll let you know closer to the day if I'm up for it. And so really I see how do we walk that line in terms of like flexibility? Like, how do we communicate? I just need you to be flexible because I can't give you solid answers right now. And my capacity changes day to day. But the invitation is meaningful and it makes me feel good, to be included. That's one way that comes up for me.
I love how you spoke to, which I think is applicable to all relationships in our life, but assuming good intent, right? People don't want to harm us. People want to help us. And there is such a helplessness in something you can't fix and not having a solution for grief. But in recognizing that 99.9% of people don't look at you as being a burden. And then that extends compassion for yourself. And I think when you give yourself compassion and you give everyone around you grace, you feel safer to open up and tell people, I have a plan A, which is I'm going to come over if I'm at full capacity and just be with everybody. I have a plan B, which is I'm feeling really tender today. I'm just going to come over for dessert. And then the day of, I just feel like I'm on an empty tank. I'm not going to come at all. I hope you understand. More often than not, people are going to understand.
Yeah.
I think we just worry. We get so in our heads that we're going to disappoint everybody else.
Yes. Yes. And people, so much of the grief experience is so soupy and like everyone's swimming in the unknown with each other. It's like, I don't even know what I need. You don't know how to communicate with me or like what to do with me. I don't know what to do with myself. Like I need you, but I don't want to talk to you. There's so much confusion and unknown. And so, yeah, really like, trust me, more often than not, people would love to hear an action plan from you or like just tell me what to do, like, and I'll do it because I have no effing clue, but really just like handing them the keys is like will decrease their anxiety about how to be a good friend or a good person.
And I know easier said than done, right? I've been on the other side of like, I don't even know what I need, but if you have the ability to map something out or you feel safe enough to have these conversations, I think more often than not, people are going to show up for you and make space for whatever is showing up.
Yes. Yes. And I actually created something exactly for that. Didn't mean to make a plug here, but if you want me to send it, it's a totally free download. But I created a grief support menu for supporters to hand their people so that they don't have to come up with the words. And it has like, I want you to text, check in with me even if I don't respond. Here are the things that feel helpful to hear. Here are the action items, I could use help with. But it's a pretty easy, accessible thing if you want that somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. For widows who feel torn between wanting connection and also needing solitude during the holidays, how can they find a balance that honors both their grief and their desire for community?
Mm-hmm. Going back to what we spoke about a moment ago, I think flexibility, like giving ourselves permission to just be flexible, and what that might look like is having exit strategies in place and communicating that need for flexibility ahead of time. So, for example, I really want to see you. I'm going to come, depending on the day. I may only be able to stay for an hour, depending on how I'm feeling that day. You might end up staying longer, amazing, but make sure you're driving yourself there and you don't depend on someone else for a ride. Or maybe you tell the host, say the host well enough to say, hey, when I text you this code word, that means like I'm at my limit and I'm going to leave and I love you, but I'm not going to like do a whole goodbye. I'm just going to like disappear out the back, and so it's sort of thinking about like, where can I build in so much flexibility so that I can honor my capacity truly like hour to hour. Like if connection is what I want, how do I let myself have that and set myself up to be able to get out of there when I've had enough, because I don't know what that's going to look like or be like really until I'm in it.
It's a great idea. I love that little code word.
Code word's great. Yes.
That's great. Or the supporters who are afraid of making things worse or bringing a tear to your eyes by mentioning the late spouse or by sending a family holiday card or extending an invitation. What guidance would you offer so they can show up with care and confidence for widows and really any grieving person?
I would say take the risk of being uncomfortable. Take the risk of them not being ready to come to your event or ready to talk about it. Take the risk of the griever or the widow not responding at all, but take the risk of feeling some sort of discomfort around whatever their response is or whatever it is they're needing. But more often than not, not saying anything and freezing or pulling away is going to cause more pain and loneliness. And so that's a big one that I always offer. Is just like, it might be uncomfy and you might be confronted with your own feelings of feeling rejected by that person. But if you can like really zoom out and hold the perspective, like, this is a new version of this person, this particular person that I've never met either. And they are meeting themselves in that version of themselves for the first time too. No one knows what the F is going on, but I love them, and I know that they need help. And maybe I'm not the right kind of help, or I don't know what kind of help they need, but they do need help. And I'm going to keep trying or keep extending. And then supporters can also, just like the griever can build in that flexibility, like supporters can initiate that too. They can say something like, you're welcome to come for just 30 minutes or just drive by and I'll run out and meet you and hand you, a plate of food or whatever the thing is, give you a squeeze. Can I come by later? If you change your mind last minute, that's totally okay. Like, in what ways can you take the pressure off? Like, still extend the invitation and let them know, like, I am not at all going to take this as a personal rejection of my love for you, if you don't show or if you cancel. Like, I completely understand, so what ways can they initiate that so that the widow or the griever doesn't have to say it?
I really like that. That's a great idea. I've always said it costs you nothing to show up and everything when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
none of us are doing this perfectly.
Yeah.
We're all bobbling and we are all making mistakes. And just showing up, even with a listening ear, right? Or like you just said, I've got a plate for you. You don't even need to come in. I will give it to you through the window. Being there, dropping off a cup of coffee on the door and saying, you know what, I think today might be too much for you to have conversations with me, but I want you to know I care about you. I love you. There's coffee at your front doorstep. If you need anything else, let me know. They're such huge gestures, and they're things that go the distance. They're things that grievers remember long term, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if we think about, like, there are thousands and thousands of small and big ways to communicate care, and silence is not one of them. Silence is not one of them, and I think anyone can understand that piece, right?
Yes. Before we end our call today, is there anything you can think of, anything you'd want to add to wrap this conversation up with a little bow?
Just that I'm so grateful for this space and your work. And I know that you are making such a massive, profound difference in so many lives. And I love you. I think you're great. Thank
I
you for
love
having
you.
me on.
Yeah, no, the feeling is absolutely mutual. You have taught me so much. You may not even know that, but you have taught me so much along this short amount of time that we've known one another. And I wish that we could meet in person. We're not far from one another, but we're going
to make it happen eventually.
Go to the phone and give you a big hug. You offer so much insight, and people really, really value what you bring to the table. So it is an honor for me to have you on today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so, so much.
Navigating grief during this time of year can feel like living in two different worlds. The battle between wanting to connect and needing to withdraw is real for grievers, and it can also make supporters feel unsure of how to act. To those grieving, honor your needs, be gentle with yourself, and remember that it's okay to say yes sometimes and no other times. To those supporting, your efforts, even when imperfect or uncertain, can provide a lifeline. Showing up with care, understanding, and compassion matters more than you might realize. Together, both grievers and supporters can create a holiday season that holds space for tenderness, presence, and connection. If this episode spoke to you, consider sharing it with someone who might need that reminder. You don't have to navigate grief alone, and self-compassion is always possible. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Big hugs and lots of love. You've been listening to The Widows Collective. I'm Lauren Lentz, and it means so much to me that you spent this time here today. If you found comfort or connection in today's episode, I invite you to please subscribe, leave a rating, or share it with someone who might need a little support. You can also follow me on Instagram at I'm Sorry We're Friends and join my email list at laurenlentz.com to explore my one-to-one grief coaching, group program, retreats, and other tools designed to help widows navigate loss with understanding and guidance. I hope you'll join me next week for another conversation where we'll continue exploring grief, healing, and ways to reimagine life after loss. I'm sorry you're here, and I'm so grateful that you are. Thank you for being a part of this community. Your presence is an act of courage and self-compassion, and I'm honored to walk this path alongside you.